Welcome to the Fire Sprinkler Podcast with Chris and Logan. Greatario has been providing complete turnkey firewater solutions since 1986. Designing, building, or maintaining your tank, no matter the requirements. Designed to meet or exceed industry standards, you can depend on Greatario Tank to always be ready. For more information, call 866-299-3009 or visit www.greatario.com. Let's build something great.
Like and subscribe.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. I have Jeff from Greatario on, and we are going to talk about water storage tanks. Jeff, how's it going today?
It's going great, Chris. Good morning. How are you doing?
I am not as buried in the snow as you are. We had quite a snowstorm kind of come through over the past, I don't know, was it over the weekend anyways? This is being recorded in January 2022. And the GTA area kind of got hammered.
We sure did. Oh man.
You guys still digging it out or what?
We're still digging it out in places. Definitely. Yeah.
We were supposed to get the huge drop in the snow. It was on the radar. And then the last minute, the Lake Erie wind blew it all up your way. So, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. At least we have winter now.
Yeah. Now we had a very, very mild December, November, very mild. And finally they just dropped all the snow there right at the beginning of 2022. Podcast episode today is going to be about water storage tanks. So before we get into water storage tanks, why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. No, sounds great. So I've been with this particular company, Greatario, for about 15 years, and kind of came into the construction industry as a construction engineering technologist, and brought into Greatario predominantly a water wastewater industry and company, but had supplied many different tanks for different applications, and really just started digging further into fire protection tanks and different types of industry for storing any manner of water and wastewater, but a lot of inquiries for fire protection water storage. And so that's one of our market areas that we do quite a bit of business with, and as the director of sales, we kind of pursue these projects across the country.
So what is kind of the area that you guys cover? Because the podcast has a good we cover a pretty big span, North America, over in the UK. What's your area of coverage? Do you guys do business in the States, or are you guys mainly a Canadian based company?
Good question. So basically, sorry.
Yeah.
No answer machine working from home, you know what it's like.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, needless to say, as a company, we look after all of Canada as Greatario. But basically, we look after the state of Michigan as well through a dealership called Blue Water Storage Systems. Okay. And as far as Greatario goes, we look after coast to coast and operate Aquebec construction for the province of Quebec. Okay. So all of those, as I described, we're the exclusive dealer from CST Storage, which is the manufacturer of the tanks in the U.S. And they distribute, throughout the world, basically.
Yeah, CST. I've heard of a lot of CST. I've seen them at trade shows and stuff like that. We don't have a lot of big fire protection trade shows here in Canada. Right. So, I haven't had a chance to see who shows up to them. There's been a couple casa events.
Yes. But
not so much. I don't think you guys have ever been to any of the casa events, have you?
It's been a while. I went down to the Nashville conference, and then I've been to the one out in New Brunswick a few years ago. Yep. But yeah, as being an every 2-year thing, those are great events.
Yeah, it feels like we haven't been able to go to a conference in like 10 years now. Exactly. COVID's really messed up my train of thought. I keep telling people last year when I ran into you at NFPA, I haven't been NFPA since 2019.
Yeah. It's a blur.
Yeah, it's been a blur.
Yeah, for sure.
So what are the different, what type of storage tanks do you guys manufacture and distribute, and where do they come from? Do they come from the States, or do you guys manufacture them here in Canada?
Yeah, good point. So the tanks are manufactured just outside of Chicago, in DeKalb, Illinois,
Okay.
about 8 hours from Southern Ontario. And then, they're actually distributed or shipped from there all around the world. And then there's other manufacturing plants in Kansas, Parsons, Kansas. And some of the components are manufactured in Texas. And even there's the weld store product comes out of Tennessee. So the CST products come out of a lot of different locations. And those are supplied as kind of raw materials, engineered like a mechanoset in a sense, and supplied to Greatario to then, build across the country for different applications.
Right. So then Greatario takes the product and then assembles it on site. So you guys are like a manufacturer and distribution.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
And in some ways, it's almost like we're a construction company more so. We just, we're selling and supplying the construction and the turnkey package, I guess I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as the construction is concerned, I'm a sprinkler contractor. I've got a building that's got terrible water supply. What do I bring to you to get this process going?
For sure. So, in some cases, we see the kind of inquiries come in from all aspects. Somebody, from an owner's perspective might be, they own a warehouse and we've got to increase or we've got to install sprinklers, and they might really know very, very little. We need a water supply and a sprinkler system.
Right.
And I can kind of guide them according to who some of the sprinkler contractors are in that area that we know or have worked with. And they might know that they need X cubic meters or gallons of water, all the way through to working with a sprinkler engineer that knows very specifically what they want, the tank size. It has to be under 10, 20 meters tall, all those specifics. So we kind of work hand in hand right through the whole gamut of experience or comfort level, and their comfort level with an FPA 22 to just basically meet those requirements first and foremost. But it goes over and above that because you've got to meet with an outdoor structure. I mean, you're dealing with a structure here with a foundation and the design and soil bearing pressures to handle this liquid, and every aspect of, the roof, the wind, the seismic design. So it is a pretty, complex project sometimes.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, and don't take this the wrong way, but it seems like you put a tank over there and then I hook my big beefy fire protection system up to it. But there's a lot more involved with it because there's a lot of work that goes involved with installing a sprinkler system when it comes to can the building support the weight of 6-inch versus 4-inch versus 3-inch lines and 1.5-inch lines, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to do that only with the earth.
That's right. Yeah.
and all of the water that is potentially going to be feeding through the system. You don't have to take the 10 times the weight of the water filled system. You've got to take 10, not 10 times the weight, but you have to take the weight of all the water that could potentially go through the system.
Exactly. And it's amazing, with the weight of water and all of a sudden you have a 50, 60 foot high water tank, what that means to the overall system, even, flooding the suction of the pump and everything, lots of different things. And of course, from a customer's perspective, they want it to look, pretty at the end of the day and match their building and the aesthetics and, maybe put their sign or their logo up on the side of this tank.
So do you guys work with somebody else? If somebody said, I want you to put a tank in there and then I want you to like a mural on the side of the tank, is that somebody you subcontract or do you guys do that yourselves in-house?
We mostly do that ourselves in-house. Okay. So in the case of fire tanks, of course, they're insulated and cladded. So we're affixing some type of a sign or logo onto the side of the tank. And so that's, definitely plays a factor because somebody just wants words. And then sometimes that's the last decision that you're trying to pull out and we're almost ready to pull off site. And we need the exact color and the aesthetics become really critical to, a new industry with their prize project, things like that.
I like that you said the fire protection system is the prized, the prized part of the entire project that they're doing. That's nice. Not too many people say that. They only say it when they have a fire and they're like, oh, this is the best, the fire protection. There's no return on investment until you have a fire. Is like,
isn't that the truth? Yeah.
That's right.
You're gonna protect that prize.
That's right. Yeah. Now, as far as the installation process goes, you guys are responsible. You come and you dig the foundations,
exactly.
Pour the footings, everything like that, or is that like the civil guys come in and do that, and you come and put a tank on top? They're responsible for doing everything else, and you guys do just the tank?
And that's a great question. So basically, we can do as much or as little, as a part of the project. So
Okay.
if there's lots of activity going on, a big new project, you're probably going to have the earthworks and maybe the foundation done by the contractor that's doing the rest of that type of work, and then Greatario would just build the tank and the roof and the insulation and cladding, heaters, mixers, things like that.
Right.
We would do that, but then there is far more, majority of the times I'd say, that you're retrofitting an existing facility, you're adding storage, for whatever reason, it's more cost effective in insurance and things like that. We're going to put our own storage. We'll have 100% responsibility. We're going to put in our own tank. And then that case, we can kind of be that piece of the puzzle and turnkey everything related to that tank. The underground piping, the foundation, the earthworks, electrical, mechanical, and tie it all in together.
Right. And as far as like devices that get attached to it, do you guys, is the building owner responsible for that stuff, or the contractor responsible for that stuff? Or do you guys put things in like low temperature alarms?
We do. Yeah. So we would provide, and again, it comes back to either the sprinkler designer and who wants to be part of that.
As much or as little as you want, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But anything that attaches to the tank, the walls or the roof or through the floor, Greatario takes that responsibility and we install that. So if it's a 150-pound flange bolted to the side, then that's what we'll do.
Right.
Somebody else can install, the particular level sensor they want and look after all the connection details to these devices. But in other cases, it's, already pre-planned and, we can supply and install anything within a meter of the tank, let's say. And then somebody else can, tie in the piping.
Right.
Fire pump. In some cases, buildings actually attach right up against our tank. So
really?
We'll flash the building completely against the side of the tank, and then any penetrations will come through the side wall of the tank right into your pump house. And it makes it simple because then you don't have, heat trace and insulating of piping and different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would, that would be ideal almost if you could do it directly attached. Like the tank would become the outside wall of the building.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you're standing in with your fire pump and maybe at the generator area, you'd actually be looking at the sidewall of the tank and have the manways inside there too.
A nice window with some fish.
There you go. I have put a window. Don't start me, but I have put a window on a tank before, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, is that just so that they could do internal inspections, or is that they just?
It's at a tech demonstration center, and they want to be able to, they bring everything from school to water operators through for training, and you can look inside the tank to see, what your drinking water looks like, and the cathodic protection system, which is part of our glass fused to steel tanks, is a cathodic protection system that basically extends the life of a tank structure.
Sure.
So it sacrifices these anodes for, the life of the tank structure. So it's just kind of a neat thing having a window on that one.
Do they install those on the fire protection tanks as well?
We do. Yeah. So we, one of the most common tanks are these glass fused to steel tanks, or Aquastor is the brand. And so these glass tanks, with the rounded edges on the sheets and the stainless steel edges that were part of some of the original Aquastor tanks, that's the biggest part of what we supply. So it's a glass fused to steel floor, walls, and in some cases the roof as well. Mm-hmm. And it's completely, it's inert to chemicals and chlorine. It is actually porcelain, like a glass fused to the steel. So the panels are fused with glass baked at 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. And basically that's, one of the wonderful things about that product is that they can last in excess of 30, 40 years.
It'll last the fire protection system.
Exactly. I mean, it's our oldest structures for that application are coming up 40, 45 years old, still with the original coating on them as glass. So that's a pretty decent longevity there.
Spilled water on my desk. Sorry, we can keep as far as preventative maintenance, you were talking about things that are required for the preventative maintenance. Is that something you guys do as well, or is that a subcontracted thing?
We do. So we've got a services division Scott Plant heads that up, and so
Okay.
we do like underwater in-service inspections. So we
Okay.
have submarines that we can put inside of all manner of tanks. It doesn't
Awesome.
just to be a Greatario type, but concrete welded anything.
Right.
And we can put that submarine inside, and we can provide basically an inspection report and look at anything. Particularly, we can actually measure the amount of sediment in the tank. If it's time for a clean out, we have the capability of actually cleaning out the tank without taking it offline.
Oh, really?
Using a robot as well. And that's a really unique feature, because in some cases that can get very expensive and time consuming to take a tank offline.
Yeah,
Of
for
course,
sure.
then you don't have that protection and water storage at the time. So yeah, that's proving to be quite effective, and we do that right across the country, which is great.
With the ROVs, the remote operated vehicles, are
Yes,
they on a
that's
leash?
right.
Like, can you do that with the fire protection system while the fire protection's still in service?
You can, yeah. Keeping in mind that everybody's got to be sort of aware of what's happening at the moment,
Right.
and stuff like that, because you don't want the submarine, in the vicinity of the vortex breaker or anything like that. But yeah, absolutely. You could,
Yeah.
it could be a half-day process where you're vacuuming out the whole floor of the tank even. But I mean, the submarine's got lights and capabilities with a claw to pick up something, if depending on what's inside there.
Now, how often when you're doing those remote inspections, like, is it common to find a buildup in debris? If you have a complete enclosed tank, like, what are the chances you're going to get buildup in debris? I guess it depends on what kind of water supply you're filling the tank with, right? The water is only going to be as clean as the supply you're feeding it with.
Exactly. So if in some cases, if you have some of our tanks, in fact, one of our oldest one, which is 25 years old, it's a dual purpose tank. So you're actually pulling, which is permissible in NFPA 22, where you can have your fire protection water in the bottom portion of the tank.
Okay.
And any additional, like for example, potable water above that. So in the idea of having regular turnover in the tank, as long as you're maintaining those minimum levels, you could have turnover in the tank. And if it's sitting and settling at times, you're going to have some super fines that might settle out at the bottom of the tank over 5 or 10 years.
Sure. No, probably no more than, I mean, anybody that's done underground on fire protection systems or has seen the shape of a supply pipe on the underground for the municipal water supply. It does not look like clean water comes out of that, for sure.
Yeah. It's amazing. But anyway, that's something that you can keep the tank in service. You can remove that at the same time, which is ideal. You
Right.
don't have to go through the downtime and all those steps and processes.
So what are the different type of tanks that Greatario installs? Like, do you guys strictly do the steel on ground storage tanks, or do you guys have the capabilities of doing, the up on the pillars, the big tall storage tanks, things like that? Like, what do you guys do?
For sure. So whether it's glass fused to steel, as I described, or factory baked epoxy tanks,
Okay.
they're all meant for above ground. So either they're on grade or they're elevated up in the air on a pedestal.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
60 feet in the air, maybe 100. I'm working on one that's 180 feet
Wow.
right now. So sometimes for pressure purposes, of course, we do a lot of municipal water and wastewater. So elevated up in the air can be pretty common as well. But we also supply welded tanks. So both factory welded tanks, so much smaller, that you could truck to site and set them in place, versus some field welded as well. So we work with a company to be able to provide field welded certain applications as well. But yeah, so we kind of, we'll look after it as the tank contact person. We tend to get a lot of inquiries, for the application, and then we can kind of help guide, what makes sense. Because the tanks are bolted like a modular structure, if you think of it as like a mechano set.
Yep.
Or Lego, the idea that it's pre-engineered, it can come out of the factory very quickly. And the building method, so we actually build the roof first on the ground, and we jack in one ring at a time And this is kind of
Oh,
described
cool.
as the bolted tanks in NFPA. But basically, we're bolting in one ring at a time, and we're jacking it up in the air as we're building one ring, the next ring, and the next ring. So because of that modular construction, that lends itself really well to, an industrial application where you could actually disassemble the tank and move it. So if you're on leased property, temporary applications, you could disassemble the tank and rebuild it someplace else. There's a possibility we could buy it back and resell it to another application.
Right.
And another application, we can actually expand the tanks and make them larger in the future.
Right.
So if if XYZ company adds their capacity of their warehouse, we could just raise the tank another, 10 meters, and you'd have, twice the water capacity to meet the fire demand, things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that is pretty neat. In fact, the coolest story was we actually disassembled a town's water tank near Ottawa. It was 22 years old. They did not need it anymore. We disassembled that and we rebuilt it at an ice cream factory. A 22-year-old tank, and actually rebuilt it for a water storage, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a certain ice cream factory around here that had some fire issues recently, is it?
No. but we do have a tank there as well, which, I mean, that's perfect example of a scenario where they did build a fire tank, because like all private industry, if you're putting all that 100% reliance in the water supply, and the three things, of course, NFPA calls for is if you don't have the right quality, quantity, or pressure,
Yes.
then that's when you're going to be looking to add to your water capacity and your supply.
Right.
And the insurance companies like that you have it on site, and they really like that it's above grade, because you can see if there's so much as a drip and it's not full. Part of our package is heaters or mixers and sensors for temperature and things like this. But if it's above grade, it's all in there and intact. And sometimes if it's out of sight, out of mind, or below grade, you don't know the condition of what's in the tank, maybe.
That's right. Yeah, that's a big issue with certain aspects, right? Everything in fire protection, when it's out of sight and out of mind, like the fire department connections, I never like to pipe the ball drips outside. Right. Just a certain spot of the fire protection. I never like to pipe them outside, because water dripping outside isn't an issue, but water dripping on the floor inside a warehouse, inside an office building where the fire department connection goes through the wall,
right?
Somebody's going to do something about it. That means the check valve's leaking.
Yep.
Something like that, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Little things like that, right?
That's right. And I mean, any tanks underground, concrete or any other materials, they've got to be anchored or above the water table. And that, with climate change and everything these days, like, it's hard to kind of, all right, what exactly is our supply and what's the water table at?
Find a water table in Ontario that's, you're going to be going half a kilometer or a mile out in each direction, but only 2 feet deep, because you got to stay above the water table.
That's right. Yeah. So anchoring tanks in the ground is not an easy thing to do too.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Jeff, is there anything else you want to let people know about Greatario and what you guys do?
I'm pretty good. I mean, happy to, we just love to chat about fire tanks and fire sprinkler tanks, to be honest. So if anybody ever had any questions, be happy to talk with anybody and just share some of the examples. We've probably, I couldn't tell you how many we've built across the country, but happy to chat about, any particular problems or challenges and come up with solutions for that.
And how do they get a hold of you if they need to get a hold of you?
Probably the best way is just if you go to greatario.com. So that's GREAT, like great, ARIO.com. And from there, you'll be able to see lots of information related to fire protection, and contact emails and phone numbers, things like that.
Awesome. Jeff, thanks for coming on the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. This has been kind of one of the highest demanded questions about, or podcast topics, is to talk about water storage tanks and the requirements. It was nice talking to you. Thanks for taking some time to talk.
Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey everyone, this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is done.
If you liked this episode, leave a review, comment, or hop over to my social media pages and let me know. Just search Fire Sprinkler Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't forget to hashtag Fire Sprinkler Podcast and anything you think I should know about or see. If you have any suggestions for future episodes of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast, email info@firesprinklerpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Take care.